Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time. Well, everybody's talking about Charlie Sheen, so why not? Why not? Well, that's the question. Why not? I can think of a lot of reasons why not to talk about Charlie Sheen. But of course, even listing those reasons is talking about Charlie Sheen. I don't know. Did you watch the documentary? You did? Well, maybe you noticed some of the things that I noticed and that he noticed and pointed out. And it's one of the things that's like kind of really hard for me to figure out about life, because I don't like it when people say no regrets. Regret is stupid. And, I see what they're saying. It's dumb to regret things that you've done too much when you are debilitated by it, but there's another thing to not. There's this whole movement to say don't feel regret. Only feel gratitude for your experiences. And there's something about that rings true and wise about it. You should be grateful for everything. But what do you do about being honest and not glorifying bad things? Charlie Sheen was a really bad person for a long time, even by his own admission. He behaved terribly. But yet, at every step, he was rewarded for this terrible behavior. And that's kind of one of the shitty, paradoxical things about life, is that you are rewarded and you are encouraged to do terrible things. The more terrible Charlie got, the more people cheered him on. Like getting some kind of vicarious joy from the destruction that he was laying down upon all of his friends and family. It's notable that his dad, Martin Sheen, and his brother, Emilio Estevez, decided not to be part of the documentary. And I can see why. I think that's the clearest thing. They're like, no. Because they know that this reward cycle that he's currently in again, 7 years clean, yippee skippy, high five, good job, Charlie. But isn't there such thing? Do we always need to cash in when we change our ways? This is a thing that kind of perplexed me even when I was young. I didn't like it. I remember, when was it? It seems like it was elementary school, but I don't know. It couldn't have been that early. Maybe it was junior high. But the don't do drugs thing I think it was the don't do drugs before Nancy Reagan don't do drugs. So I think it might have been in junior high or something, but I don't know. Somebody that had done a bunch of drugs came to talk to one of our classes, and, it was kind of around that Scared Straight era. Remember that show? Where they took young kids into prisons and the prisoners would set them straight and scare the shit out of them. But there was always this kind of a hero thing about people who had done wrong and then changed their ways. I've always had this problem. Schindler's List, another story. A guy who just to elevate somebody as a hero when they've basically done nothing but fuck up over and over and over again just seems like a bad deal. But we also like stories of redemption. You know, it's good to see somebody fall, make bad decisions, turn their life around, and maybe do something good with it. But where's the line? Where is the line between glorification, you know, and not glorifying and saying things for what they are? And there's just real temptation in my mind to say, maybe it's best when you really screw up to apologize and write your life privately. But even as I say that, I can think of the counter argument, you know, the possibility that you can inspire other people. You know, you can give other people hope that have become shitty because of drugs and selfishness and insecurity. And you want to give them hope that they can turn around too. But is the hope that you get a big pat on the back and you do a tour and you say, look at me, look at me, look at me. There's a documentary about me. me. Look at me. I mean, I feel kind of the same way about making these recordings because, you know, on the one hand, with art and communication, you want, for me, I say, if you want an art piece to be effective, tell the truth so hard that it sounds like a lie. You know, fess up. Say how things really are, because you're more likely to get to inspire or to help somebody if you really tell the truth, you know, to accurately portray reality. I don't know, maybe that's helpful. I don't know if anything's helpful, quite frankly. But I feel compelled to do things, and I guess maybe Charlie Sheen was compelled to do the things he did. But anyway, the point is like, I'm in no way, I'm going to compare myself to Charlie Sheen because that's the whole thing, you know, here. But on a much smaller scale, you know, I never did half the drugs that he did, or certainly to the extent. I was never as debaucherous, but there's been some debauchery, you know, moving to San Francisco and trying to prove myself. Believe it or not, this is where it's going to really blow your mind, is that a lot of the debauchery I got involved in was in order to prove to myself that I wasn't a judgmental jerk, which is why I got out of religion, because I didn't like the judgmentalness of it. So I went and did a bunch of bad things to prove that I was no better than the people that my fellow Christians and Mormons were looking down upon. Yeah, exactly. It's screwy. But I was giving my own Jesus spin on it. Jesus hanging out with the hookers, Jesus telling people not to cast the first stone, and I know he didn't actually hang out with hookers, but basically just kind of rebuking his disciples and anybody within earshot for being holier than thou. You know, basically saying it's not your job, that's God's job. So I took that to a really stupid extreme, moving to San Francisco. And, you know, I don't want to tell the stories about every single debaucherous thing that happened, even though I know that those stories would reap rewards, you know? Which is one of the things where I kind of doubt that Charlie Sheen is done with his cycle of abuse and his narcissism. And I want to cut him slack because fame is so tempting, especially once you're in it and the money, and people just keep rewarding you. Like every time you do something terrible, people cheer you on and give you more opportunities. But that's like that for you too, for everybody. You know, whenever there's so much, they say the devil's tempting you, but really it's your neighbors, it's your average person that's cheering you on when you take on this attitude like you don't care. Oh, I don't care. I don't care. That guy doesn't care. He's rad. I mean, it's a terrible thing to say. Care is a wonderful word. You know, caring is good. Not caring isn't something to brag about. You know, I made a recording on this a while back. Why do you care? People always ask me, why do you care? As if it's some virtue to not care. But that's really the world does reward people who just simply break all the rules and they're assholes, jerks, you know? When I was going through my debaucherous tempting and, fate and proving to myself that I wasn't the uptight Mormon kid, you know, I was rewarded. People liked it. People love it. If you advertise that you're breaking the rules and doing things that religious people might consider to be sins, you get rewarded. Opportunities come your way. Your inbox gets filled up. People think you're awesome. They add you on Facebook. They follow you. They buy your stuff, and I don't know, would you say they're nice to you? I don't know what you get red carpet treatment. You get invited to every party. Not because you're doing good things, not because you're being humble and friendly, but because you're breaking all the rules. You're saying fuck it. And granted, the rules that I broke are nothing compared to Charlie Sheen. But the point is I'm trying to say that we all have our inner Charlie Sheen, and you know it when you say something irreverent at work or do something, you get rewarded. People laugh, and I don't know, maybe I'm just becoming unfunny. Maybe I never was funny to begin with, but I am getting more and more uncomfortable with the celebration of, I hate to use the word sin because it's like so church lady. But I mean, what else do you want to call it? Just being careless. That's really what it is. Not caring, being careless, not caring about how your actions are affecting other people. Like even the people that were in that documentary about Charlie, Sean Penn, not a guy I'm a fan of at all. Even his ex-wives, one was crying and she said, no, you can keep this in there. Keep this in there. It's just like this idea that we have to make products of our lives and of our mistakes and everything. I'm just really having a hard time with that. I get that art can serve a function, but I also just understand why art was kind of banned by so many different cultures, because there's such a manipulative aspect about it. I don't know. The taboo. Is there value in the taboo? Is it okay to shut the fuck up about all the bad things you did at risk of glorifying it? Can you tell the story without glorifying it? Is that even possible? Or is it built in? Because the more honest you tell the story, the more you will be revered for it, even if you're saying, don't revere me. What I've done is wrong. Don't follow my example. What you're really doing is you're laying out a course where somebody goes, damn, you're cool for saying that and for having those experiences and for being honest about it. Well, what does that really do? It sets out a charting a course, how to be cool, make a ton of mistakes, be as reckless as possible, careless, and then repent later and get more rewards. Not only were you rewarded, you know, for the sins, for the carelessness, but now you're rewarded because you're marketing it afterwards. Anyway, and Charlie Sheen's doing that. And he seems like a human being, you know? He seems like he's a charming guy. He seems like he wouldn't be that bad to be around if he was sober, you know? So you want to be able to, you, I want to be able to allow people the opportunity to change their ways, come back and talk about it. But I feel like the taboo has got to be part of it. Like, you know, if you're getting graphic and you're getting salacious, giving all the details, I think that's the part where it kind of gets glorifying. But then again, without the details, how does the redemption arc even come in? I guess this is another one of those examples where I just think that, I think it's really fair to say, and I've been saying it for a couple of years now and nobody ever agrees with me, but all media is porn. Because if you just go back 200 years, before any of this recorded stuff, I mean, you can go back before the printing press, where all communication was essentially smoke signals and face-to-face, and maybe some yelling across the canyon to some enemies, sending a carrier pigeon, I don't know. But there was direct accountability for everything, Before the technology allowed us to write our ideas and our thoughts, our stories, whether they be true, whether they be lies, whether they be glorifying, whether it be repentant, it doesn't matter. You're putting it in a book, you're sending it out to do your work for you. No accountability to what those words or what that idea, those ideas, how they affect people. It gives people an intimate look. The fact that I'm talking about Charlie Sheen, that we're talking about Charlie Sheen, that's weird. I don't know Charlie Sheen. I've never met Charlie Sheen. Maybe somebody watching this has, but why is he the parable we're using right now? Why aren't we talking about the guy in the neighborhood that we know? I mean, that's what it was 200 years ago for all of humankind, for all of mankind's humanity, for all the history of humanity up until just recently, until the printing press, and then this ramping arc that gets worse and worse as you add photographs, moving pictures, little boxes where I can make a recording and send it out to a bunch of people to listen to, and without having any accountability towards them, for them, That's new. That's really, really new. that we're all talking about Charlie Sheen and his debauchery, and I watched it on Netflix, and even though I get Netflix for free out from my phone plan, I'm contributing to he's getting paid again lots of money as a reward for being shitty. And maybe you can make the case that no, this time he's being paid because he's good, because he, you know. At any rate, 200 years ago we'd never know about it. I guess maybe there were stories that were passed down. I mean, you imagine these little tribes, people, clans. If you're white, I guess you're a clan. If you're white, you're a tribe. If you're not white, I don't know. But there's lore that's passed down, but there's telephone game. And so I guess there's always been stories before the printing press and whatever. And every story that's meant to teach you something has somebody that got in trouble. Those are the stories. That's why we tell them. Somebody got in trouble, and how did they get out of trouble, or how was that trouble resolved? Well, in Charlie's case, it resolves with him being nicer and better than ever. So, what's the message there? Do whatever the fuck you want, repent later. Doesn't seem like a good message, does it? I don't know. I guess I'm just getting old. I'm starting to understand why, some of the religious leaders embraced taboo, and it's making more sense to me why I don't, first of all, nobody wants to hear an old person talking about their debauchery of younger days in graphic detail, you know. I don't. I don't know. Maybe young people do. I don't know. But, the whole idea of kiss and tell and going into graphic details is just kind of, I don't really like hearing it. I don't want to hear it from people. But I get why people do. I get why people are drawn to it. And certainly when it's combined with music or film, telling a story and watching somebody in their struggles and their character arc and their redemption, I guess you can find value in it. I guess, right? Maybe. Or maybe is that the worst possible thing? The worst possible thing to have this kind of feeling that you relate with Charlie Sheen, a man you've never met. A man whose own, I don't know. I get it. Most of my family doesn't talk to me. Families are hard. I don't know what to do with judgment. That whole thing about judge not lest you be judged. I think that means you'll be judged by other people, not necessarily by God. But it's true. If you judge people, if you start saying, yeah, you did this, you did that, they're going to do it right back. And if you think your shit doesn't stink, bad news for you. It does, yeah. So yeah, I don't know what to do. The reward system is definitely there. It's built in for you to do bad shit. And there is this thing right now where, post Charlie Kirk, where he was trying to do good shit. And the more you try to do good shit, the more you're punished for it. That's the really ugly side of it. Charlie's certainly not trying to do the good shit. He's telling the story about how bad he was and how he's 7 years sober, but has he really turned the corner and tried to make amends, like real amends. Like at the beginning of the documentary, saying, this is basically a love letter to my dad, but isn't the fact that your dad not in the... When your dad says no, he doesn't want to be in it, is there any indication to you, Charlie, that maybe your dad might wish you wouldn't make it? You know? Is there a possibility there that maybe you should just go, you know what? I don't think I should be the hero to people. I think I'm disqualified. I think maybe I should deflect the attention onto somebody else who has made it their mission in life to do good things all along. There are people out there that haven't, whose, let's call it, their sin quotient is low. Maybe. I think so. I think I know some people who have, look, the struggle is gratitude for your life, because it's wrong to not feel gratitude for your life. I do feel gratitude for every second of my life, but if I could go do it over again, I'd do everything over again, and I would have a big family right now, rather than having one offspring who I didn't get to raise, who thinks I'm terrible because I like Donald Trump. you know? There's nothing I can do about that, really. I can't change that. But if I could, I would go back and do it differently. I'd have a big family and I'd have grandchildren. You know? But you don't get rewarded for saying that. There is no reward for expressing regret. That's the weird thing. I don't see any reward for that. In fact, people are sort of repelled by it. You know, if you say, I wish I hadn't done this, I wish I hadn't done that, I wish I would change that, you're almost punished for it, because the people who have done things that are the same, they don't like that call to repentance that's implied there. There's an implication that, if you say, I regret having done this, this, and this, and this, and this, first of all, there's all the people you did it with. So you're passing on some, if they liked that, or they're not willing to, or ready to accept that they might have done something that was careless and wrong, they might resent you for implicitly calling them out. Well, if he feels bad about it, am I supposed to feel bad about it? So there's no reward there. There's punishment there. People are likely to turn their backs on you for that. And then there's this other thing that's built in where people don't like, I don't know, they don't like a loser, right? And when you go back and admit you've done things wrong, it's kind of like saying you're a loser. I lost. I wanted to win this, but I lost this. I didn't do this well. I don't know. You're kind of fucked if you want to tell the truth. It's hard to tell the truth about regrets. And I just don't see that there's any reward in it. And that's kind of tough. But I guess that's, if you want to get religious and scripture, and relate this to Christian ideas, you're told in Christianity that there is no reward. They come right out and say it. There's no reward for it. You will be persecuted. If you stand up for the Christian ways and live like a Christian, the promise is that you'll be persecuted. What a weird sell that is, right? Like, hey, everybody, follow me. Make your life hard by doing the right thing. But look how evident that is right now in our world, you know? Look how quickly the narrative changed from Charlie Kirk to Charlie Sheen, you know? You know? Two drastically different characters. You know? One is being heralded as a hero. I'm not trying to paint Charlie Sheen as this lefty, terrible guy either, by the way. But, it's kind of like a rational guy. He's not like a guy that went out and killed people or anything. Nearly killed himself. Maybe helped in other people killing themselves with drugs. He was with one woman that ended up overdosing. He certainly didn't help her, right? But these are the two heroes within a month. Charlie's only been dead for a month. And the Charlie Sheen documentary, and he's everywhere. And quite frankly, he was on Rogan when they found out about Charlie being killed, and Charlie Sheen acted like a decent guy, and he's been acting like a fairly decent guy in all of his... He may have turned his life around. Good for him. But just compare the two stories. Charlie Kirk, by all accounts, was never careless. He just was never careless. He always cared. And he's dead. Bullet in the neck. And Charlie Sheen did almost nothing right. Pursued narcissistic things, drugs, debauchery, carelessness with friends and family. And he's got the most popular series on Netflix. The two Charlies. It's really kind of dramatic. I mean, I don't know how you resolve the... it's just a really tough sell. Do good, be persecuted. Do bad, be rewarded. But if you do good, you'll be rewarded in the small ways. I mean, not for Charlie's sake, though. He's dead. He's dead. He also didn't get to raise a family. He got to raise his kids for a couple years. But he's dead, Pretty crazy stuff. I know, I'm getting too existential with this shit. And I don't even smoke pot. But anyway, that's what I've been thinking about. Thanks for listening. Unnecessary outro song to totally waste more